Drew here, and I think that the best thing that I can say about Chapelwaite, the new EPIX original series, is that even though it's adapted by Jason and Peter Filardi from a short story by Stephen King and expanded to 10 episodes, it feels as much like a Stephen King story, despite all the expanded material, as Lisey's story, which came out earlier this year, and much, much more so than The Stand, which was also released this year. I think that it's an exercise in mood above all else. It takes a very strong page from The Turn of the Screw with this governess looking after these children in a house where foreboding supernatural happenings are taking place. But it also takes a lot of pages from Stephen King's other novels, such as Salem's Lot, the story that's kind of the sequel slash the succession, the follow up to the short story upon which this one is based. So if you're familiar with Stephen King, then you kind of know what's going on here. You might have some clues, but I'm going to intentionally avoid spoilers, even though some of you might be able to read between the lines. But this is an exercise in mood above all else. And I think that this kind of becomes a problem in some ways because none of the characters really matter. And in a 10 episode series, when you find yourself not really caring about most of the characters and just being like, okay, when's the next scary and creepy thing going to happen? I think it's a little bit of a problem because when you're watching a show that goes on for 10 episodes, something where, you've seen Stephen King's novels adapted successfully into 2-hour films, and here they've got it stretched to 10 hours, you're like, okay, the mood can only stretch so far. Take The Shining, like that's one of the best Stephen King adaptations, and that's nothing if not an exercise in mood. But the thing that had going for it that this one doesn't is, first, as I mentioned, it was 2 hours, and second, that one had a lot of striking visuals and artistry on display. And this one, it does a decent job, an adequate job of capturing the mood of the town that this is taking place in, Preacher's Crossing, and in giving it this sense of dread and impending violence. And, it's one of those shows where people go wandering around for a really long time and then something creepy happens. And that happens an awful lot. And the nature of what's going on, I think it's taking way too long to develop. I feel like it would be better to give the audience more indications of perhaps of what the nature of the evil in this town is. But that's just what I think would have been the better thing to do. That's not necessarily an inherent flaw. But to me, the problem is that here, like I said, it's pedestrian visuals throughout. It's a very monotone, desaturated look. The production values on the whole are very good. I think that you've got very good costume design, the houses, and once you get to the town, everything, you do feel very, very much immersed in the atmosphere. A quibble, there was a scene on a ship in the beginning and they tossed a body overboard and you could see that it was just a stationary pool of water. There were no waves lapping up against the side of the boat. You could tell that it was just a ship set in a tank, and not a very good one at that. But that's a minor quibble. But moving past that, like everything is relatively well rendered, but the visuals are pretty monotonous and on the whole just not that striking or memorable, which hurts this a little bit, but the mood is still pretty well rendered. But I feel that the problem is that the mood is all there is, and there's a thin line between slow and slow burn. And I would say that for me, this falls into the former category, where it's just slow. There's just too little plot to carry this story forward. I think, you see some interesting stuff, some potential for interesting character development. The main character has to grapple with the townspeople's fear of his family, both because the people who have given him this house upon their passing, whom he has inherited it from, they left the townspeople believing that they were evil and that they had some kind of hand in this disease that has stricken the townspeople, and because his children are biracial, and because of this, the townspeople, racism comes out. And, between that and the character played by Emily Hampshire, who signs on to be his governess. As I mentioned, this takes a few pages from Turn of the Screw, who is this modern woman who wants to be a writer and thinks that she might be on the scene of the best story in town. Between these elements, you definitely see a modern twist on the period drama in certain ways, although it's probably not very authentic from what I've read and seen in historical books. But putting that aside, I think that the main issue is that there's story potential there, but you just don't care about any of these characters. The two most prominent characters are Adrien Brody's lead character, and he's a producer on this show, and you can tell he's an actor who I've always rooted for. I think he's very, very talented, and he can really do wonders in the right role. But I think that both him and Emily Hampshire, the other main character, are just kind of fatally miscast. I think Brody is particularly problematic because the show, I think, hinges a lot more on him than it does on her. And I think the main issue with him is he's just not the right actor for this show. I've seen him be very good in roles where he got to chew the scenery and be a wild and reckless force. I think that he thrives on playing outlandish, kind of smarmy characters. But here, trying to play the straight man, trying to play this person who is a good father, who is very communicative to his children, and he's obviously grappling with fears that he will harm his children the way that his father harmed him. Again, no spoilers here, but you find out very quickly that he has a very, very troubled past that he is trying to put behind him. This is not a character that Adrien Brody should be playing, and he tries to play it straight, and it just doesn't work. It makes the character very, very bland, and also it just doesn't work because it's Adrien Brody. I feel like they could have gone two different directions with this. They could have made this character clearly unsettled and crazy from the beginning in such a way that even his own kids are afraid of him, but that's not what they did. They tried to make him a straight man, and I just feel that Adrien Brody's personality and abilities as an actor are at war with this character. I also feel Emily Hampshire, she's most well known for her performance in Shit Creek, where I feel like she did a very, very good job, but I just don't think that she fits in well in this particular story because I think she comes off as too modern, and some of this is by design. I think they wanted her to seem a little bit like a character out of her time, and she's always saying things and bringing up things that it's really, really surprising that a character in her time would bring up. I guess you could call it anachronistic, but besides that, I feel that she just doesn't have the comportment, she doesn't have the acting chops of a dramatic actor that would suit this role. I think that she's best suited to comedies and perhaps more modern roles, and this just doesn't work here. And I think that from some of the other reviews I'm reading, I think that the chemistry between her character and Adrien Brody's character is just off for what they're trying to accomplish with these two characters in the story. That's not to say that you won't like this. If you're a big Stephen King fan and you just eat up anything that comes out based on his works, this could be for you. I mean, it is very, very reminiscent of Salem's Lot and of season 2 of Castle Rock. So there's a lot of things here that would you, if you liked those two shows, there's a good chance you'll like this. And if you like a show that can sustain a very gothic, a very dark, a very disturbing mood over the course of an entire season, I have a feeling that this might be up your alley. I'm gonna give it a couple more episodes before I throw in the towel, because I feel like after 3 episodes I have a pretty good read of what the show is going to be, but there's always a chance that something can improve. Now, I will say though, to me, if the writers don't know how to make something enthralling and to make characters intriguing from the beginning, then I don't think that they're ever going to resurrect it completely in the tail half. I don't think it's ever going to become something truly great, but it can get better. So those are my thoughts on Chapelwaite on EPIX, a channel that I've literally never watched a show on before. Let me know what you thought in the comments. Let me know if there were any interesting Easter eggs or little trivia bits that you know or noticed. I'd be interested to hear about that. Let me know if you liked it and if you plan to watch the rest of the season. And as always, thank you for watching.